Guys, welcome back to the Book Haven with Rachel and Raven. We're so glad that you're here. We have some special guests here today. So I have Katie, who is my oldest daughter, and she will be a senior coming up in this next school year. And then we also have Rachel's son. Rachel,
Wyatt,
do you want to introduce your...
who is also going to be a senior this year.
Yeah. So we thought it would be fun to sit down with them and just kind of share with you guys their homeschooling experience, or let them just kind of share openly and honestly. Without further ado, a little bit about yourself, like in 3 sentences, maybe something like that.
My name is Katie. I like to paint and be outside.
All right. There you go. 3. What about you, Wyatt?
Exactly 3.
My name's Wyatt. I like to play games and draw.
Y'all are exciting.
Yeah. So exciting.
One thing you should know about our 2 oldest is they're both introverts. This might be a little bit outside of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
So.
That just made us sound very homeschooled.
So Katie was in preschool when she, like, just to give a little background of how, like our first child story. Our guinea pig. This is our guinea pig. Anyways, so Katie was in preschool at a little Mother's Day out before kindergarten. So I guess she would have been 4, so like pre-K 4, whatever they call it. She was there, I think 2 days a week, maybe 3 days a week. I don't remember, but she loved it. She had no problems with it. And the plan was that when she went into kindergarten, she would go to our small church private school. We were all excited about that. But when I went to go put her in kindergarten there, within the first, what would you say, first few weeks, maybe the first week even?
It felt like a lot longer than that.
Okay. Well, there you go. Anyways, she just started coming home crying. She was bored. And I knew the curriculum that this particular school used. And I have to say, I actually worked there for a period of time, for like a year, actually, when I was pregnant with her. And I knew that the curriculum was very dry. There was no room for, I don't know, any creativity, really. So I knew what she was coming home telling me was valid. And so, long story short, so then we pulled her, we ended up pulling her out of that private school. And I kind of started on a Charlotte Mason journey. I've done the whole thing. Like, we set up a whole classroom with a board and a desk and all the things, which I'm sure she has opinions on.
About making a classroom?
Yeah. Do you think it was kind of silly?
Yeah. But I think that's how most homeschooled people started, because they tried to make it look more normal.
Yeah. It was
just funny.
It was part of my journey. But
it went from chalkboard to whiteboard to no board.
Yeah, to I don't know. So anyways, pulled her out, kind of went down that route. We were in a homeschool co-op for about 3 years, I would say. And those were just like extra classes, really not core classes. But yeah, I don't know. We've gone through a slew of different curriculums before kind of finding our groove, I think. Yeah, so I would say that's her journey. And then once we hit high school, we just, I feel like once they reach high school, it, in a sense, becomes a little bit easier, because you things kind of funnel down, right? Like, what we need to do, what we need to do for this year, what we need to do for the next year.
And we've pretty much stuck to the same curriculum.
Yeah, in the last few years, with some exceptions. But yeah, so those are some things that we've done. And yeah, she has survived the experiment thus far.
Yeah.
Wyatt, what about Wyatt's story?
So,
yeah.
Wyatt also did a Mother's Day out program. I would think it was like pre-K kind of situation. And then when I went to actually register him for kindergarten, they said, I said, can I see the classrooms and stuff like that? And they said no. And I asked, can I sign up to be a parent? Because I was already kind of worried about it anyways. And so I said, can I sign up to be a parent volunteer? And they said, we don't do that anymore. We don't allow parents to be up here at all. And where we were at, they had it set up to where kindergarten was a half a day. And so that poor teacher would have a morning kindergarten class of 30 kids and an afternoon class of kindergarten 30 kids. So she had 60 kids all day with apparently no parent help. So I went home, and it was when my husband was deployed at the time. And I can remember telling him, like, can you imagine having 30 Wyatts? And Wyatt is so, like, he was like so well behaved. He was a little angel. But I was like, can you imagine having 30 of him? Like, that would just be so overwhelming. And he's a good kid. Like, you're going to have some, crazy kids. And so It was kind of like, okay, well, we don't really want to do that. So let's try homeschooling and see how it goes, kind of thing. And so we did that for the first few years. And then I felt a little like I wasn't really sure what I was doing and stuff. So I found us a co-op that met 2 days a week, and got plugged in with community, got plugged in with moms that were ahead of me in the homeschooling journey and kind of mentored me and helped me and all of that stuff. And so we did that. And then we left that when he was after third grade. And then we moved over to classical conversations, which I've talked about before. And so we've been doing that ever since. For us, I'll ask you in a second, but for us, for me, I needed accountability. We did take off the year of COVID. So like 2020 to 2021, and we stayed home, and I really enjoyed that. But my kids were like, we need more of socialization in a sense of like having the classroom experience. So then we went back to CC after that. And so that has really worked for us, I feel like. And it's been a good accountability for me, but also for them too. So amongst peers, and then another mom who's leading the class too. So that has kind of helped, I think, when we're having some bumpy situations and having kind of a third party step in.
Yeah.
But what have you enjoyed the like community aspect of homeschooling, like having a day of community every week?
Yeah. I really enjoy it. It's like, for me, it's never too much socialization, but it's nice to get to see your friends and talk about what you've done over the past week, and just see what everyone's thoughts on it is.
Do you feel like it holds you accountable? Like, do you think?
Yeah, I would say it definitely holds you accountable, because not just presenting in front of like your mom or just being like, oh, hey, I did this, it's like you have to go up in front of a class and present it, so if you didn't do it, you have to say in front of everyone, oh, I just didn't do that. And that for sure will hold
so
you.
That positive peer pressure.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so that is our homeschool experience, I think, in a nutshell, is that we needed a community for accountability, and my kids have enjoyed that kind of socialization. But so that works for some, that doesn't work for everybody. That is, I don't know, not a plug, but like there are many ways to do homeschooling, and you could be successful at them.
Yeah.
At them all. You just have to figure out what works for your family. So do y'all want to talk about how, because y'all have done co-ops, but not in the same sense of like what we have done. So do y'all want to talk about kind of that?
So I will say that we did co-op, what we did for 3 years. And I think if I could go back now, like hindsight is always 2020, right? Like, I wish that I would have maybe followed a more, I don't know about classical conversations per se, but something similar to that, or maybe classical conversations. I think we enjoyed the social aspects of our co-op.
Yeah, but it wasn't school.
Yeah, it was a lot of extra stuff that I felt like we were doing all this extra stuff, which was great, and it's great when they're little. But it's just it's not sustainable. And so I think if I could go back, I would probably do something maybe a little bit more like classical conversations. But we got out of the co-op, I think it was 2019, because you got out at the same time. And then 2020 hit. And so, at the end, things were weird for not just 2020. Yeah. Things were weird for like a couple of years. Let's be real. Things are still kind of weird. But so we just never jumped back on that train, or I don't know. We just I think we got in our own rhythm at home.
Yeah.
And we had enough community as far as people to hang out with that it kind of filled that need. And so I didn't feel as much of the pressure to jump back into the co-op world. I just was ready to step back from that because it was a lot more work. Yeah. And our particular co-op that we were in, it was very parent driven. And so like you had to plan a class, and this class was not like a core class. It was like an extra class, They were good and they were fun, but so there was just a lot more work, and that's why we never really jumped back in. Well, there were a lot of components to that, but 2020, etc. So, and then we found our rhythm with high school, and we just kind of rolled with it. But would you say that did you miss the social? I mean, not the social, but like being a part of a co-op? I mean, there were a lot of benefits, a lot of field trips that we were able to do. We'd have like fun theme parties.
It was fun, but I don't necessarily think I missed the co-op part. I think in between the years of getting involved at church and leaving light were kind of difficult. Not really because of co-op, just because of community.
So if I could go back, I would do something different. But
and then also being okay with telling people that you're homeschooled and not seeing like public schoolers as different. I think being just confident that this is what we chose to do, that's right for us. Other people aren't bad for choosing something different.
Yeah.
What do you mean by like in the context of not doing a co-op or what?
I mean like public school, because in that time that's mostly who we were around. Our neighbors are mostly public schooled, and at church they're mostly public schooled.
So you mean like being exposed to people of all different school choices?
Yeah.
Yeah, not just secluding. Because I think that is something that a lot of people in the homeschooling community can do, is isolate to, whatever the co-op that they're in or whatever. Is that what you mean?
Okay. Yeah. And I think if we'd stayed in co-op, that might have been what would have happened.
Okay, so you mentioned, Katie, about being isolated and like not exposed to other people. And we've talked about it before, but how do you feel? Like, do you feel like that you are super sheltered and have no idea what's going on? Do you feel sheltered?
Do you feel prepared for the culture, the world that is the culture, basically?
I would say no. And honestly, our school has been good at not sheltering you, and kind of not like, throwing you out into the world, but showing you, okay, this is what culture is right now. This is what you're going to be dealing with. So, learn it. And so our class specifically has had conversations, about the big topics right now. No, I wouldn't say I'm sheltered, although a lot of people like to say I am. I am not.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. Most of my friends are either public schooled or go to some sort of thing like public school. So they, as soon as I say anything, they're like, okay, but you're homeschooled, which.
So you don't feel like you're sheltered, but other people. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like there's this notion of like homeschoolers have no idea what's going on because we live under a rock and we don't expose our kids to like what's actually going on. Katie, do you feel like you live under a rock?
No. But I think sheltered, by sheltered, do you mean just not knowing what's going on, or not knowing, or like not ever getting out of the house?
No, I mean like not having the cultural awareness of what's going on outside of what you're being taught at home.
No, I feel like I have a lot of opportunities to learn about that, and it's not really something we've been kept from knowing. And also I'm able to communicate and talk to other people about that. So I don't feel like I'm sheltered.
Yeah. Because I think that's one of the things is people aren't like, they feel like homeschoolers are going to, when they emerge from their caves, are like super weirdos that have no concept of, you know, anything. And have just been.
That's a problem in itself if you don't emerge until after you graduate.
Right. And there are people.
Well, I am an example of that.
There are people that do that and they become successful and whatever. But I do think that that's probably
only a little bit weird.
It's probably a misconception that I think a lot of people have is that your kid. And that was a discussion that my husband and I had, because it was very much of like, okay, we can do this, but I don't want my kid to be weird. And so I feel like, especially nowadays, homeschooling, there's so many options and so many opportunities to do literally everything your kid could ever want to do. And so if you have the funds, you know, and the time to do it, you could really do whatever they wanted to do. And so I think that this concept of them having no idea of or being exposed to anything is not, that's a myth, I think. In general, there are people that homeschool for seclusion. We're not talking about those people. We're just talking about regular people.
Yeah. I listened to something the other day. I think it was Heidi St. John that said, listen, all you have to do is go to Walmart and your kid is going to be exposed to something.
Yes.
And I think that's so true. So that I think the idea that you can like not, I mean, I guess there are people out there who I guess they just don't take their kids anywhere. Or they just leave their kids at home, which was partly my story. But, and you just don't know what's out there. But yeah, I think that was one of my big things is I didn't want my kids, I didn't want them to be weird. And two, I didn't want to put them in this bubble of, you know, not knowing what was out there. So,
which you could still be sheltered and know what's going on around you, but not be exposed to it in real life. So there's a bunch of homeschoolers who know a lot about politics. Well, I won't say a bunch. I know a few. But they don't know how to communicate that very well. They don't see the people that they're talking about as real people. It's just kind of another part of their bubble. So I think being sheltered isn't just knowing what's going on. It's also knowing how to deal with
it. That's a great point. Like in context, knowing what's going on in context of everything else. Yeah. That's a great point. And that was so well spoken.
Thank you.
Do you feel like you did not get enough socialization? Are you scared of socializing, or like, what's your take on that?
As an introvert, I would say it is almost too much, but that is my personal opinion. No, there is a lot of socialization. And you meet up with a group. For us, we do it once a week, but you meet up with a group of people and it's like a normal school, but it's only once a week. Our classes are a bit smaller though, so you make friends with those people, and it turns into deeper relationships just because there's not so many people in your class.
And when you were younger, you did like theater.
Oh,
and,
true, yeah.
Other. We met y'all, well, through several things, but one of them being a co-op where it was like electives. So lots of opportunities to socialize.
So what would you say about the myth of homeschoolers and the myth of socialization? Wow, that word does not want to come out.
I think it's true for a lot of homeschoolers because not because they don't have opportunity to socialize, but because they isolate themselves. And so I think it really depends, like how you homeschool. But I think in general, it's not really a problem. You probably get more socialization just because you're with a wider variety of people and adults and not just your same grade or age group.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what ways do you find that you get socialization since we didn't do a co-op? Like, we haven't done a co-op in the last several years.
Mostly through church, but that's kind of been because at first we didn't have a really big community, and that was a hard part of me going through. It was mostly junior high and beginning of high school. I didn't have a community until we really started getting involved at church, and that really helped. And so now that's my biggest source of socialization, I guess.
Yeah.
So
you also do violin.
Yeah. Do you feel like y'all don't know how to interact with people because you were homeschooled? Because I think that's the point of them saying the socialization thing, is that then when you're done homeschooling, you go out in the world and you don't know how to like interact with people because you never learned how to do it. So do you feel like you know how to interact with people?
I would say that I do. Outside of being socially awkward.
Awkward?
Socially awkward. Yep, that's proof, point in case. No, I don't think that's homeschooling's fault. If anything, homeschooling has made it easier because there's so many different people and so many different grades, but you're not restricted to just talking to people in whatever grade you're in. So like if you're in 10th grade, you're not going to be talking to people who are only in 10th grade. You're going to be talking to 10th graders, sure, but probably 11. You're going to be talking to people who are in 8th grade, you know.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't think it made us socially awkward being homeschooled. I think it probably helped a lot more because we were interacting with adults a lot more than we would if we were at any sort of school, I think. And then also interacting with people younger than us.
So looking at your peers who are also your age but in public school, and how they interact with adults, do you feel like you interact with adults better or the same, or do you see a difference in that area?
I think with my community of public school friends, their biggest source of community is at church as well, and so they're not as. So I don't think I would compare because it's pretty much the same. Our socialization is mostly at church, and so I don't think it's that much different, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that with her group of the community that she hangs out with. They go to school like they would go do a job. And then, their primary community is within the church. And so, yeah, I would agree with
So
that.
it's not isolated to just school.
Yeah.
I would say majority not. Because I feel like it would be unfair to say, oh, all public schoolers are this or all homeschoolers are that. Better than some, probably, but there's also probably public schoolers who talk better than most homeschoolers, you know? I feel like it kind of depends more on the person than the school.
Okay, so what about, do y'all feel like you are prepared academically for whatever it is that you have coming down for the pipeline? Do you feel like you're prepared? Not just like knowing everything, but do you feel like you are prepared to make the next step? I would say that, yeah.
I think so, but not because I have everything planned or I've done everything to prepare for it. Mostly because I guess practicing problem solving, and so knowing that the next thing I just have to learn how to do it. And I'm not afraid of learning. The only thing that I'm probably afraid of is not knowing what I'm going to do, not necessarily how I'm going to do it.
Figuring it out.
Yeah.
Like problem solving.
Yes.
Do you feel like you're prepared in that regard? Like, you know that you know how to problem solve? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say something around the same thing of like, I feel most prepared. But like Katie said, I feel like I know how to learn and how to, if there's something I don't know, I know how to learn it and not just kind of be stranded not knowing how to learn whatever it is. So,
But I think having the fear of like what you're going to do next is relatable to all teenagers that are graduating, because it's a big step. It's a big milestone.
Wyatt, what was your favorite thing about homeschooling?
I think one of my favorite things is just being able to get together and talk with everyone about what we've learned and just seeing the different sides of things, because you might have one friend who y'all read the same book, but one person thought that this part meant this, and then someone else is going to come up and be like, oh well, I read that as this. And it's just really interesting to see like everyone's differing I guess opinions and like what they saw.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what have you not
That's
liked?
There's
just pick one.
Yeah. There is quite a bit of work specifically for what we do. I'm sure not every I guess homeschool or co-op is like ours, but our specific one has a lot of schoolwork that you do, and sometimes it can feel like a little too much.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think my favorite was all the books I've been able to read on my own, but also doing read-alouds as a family. That's been probably my favorite part. I think my least favorite part was just having to change from curriculums so often when I was younger and mom was trying to figure out what worked best. It was frustrating, not being able to gauge where I was academically and if I was doing good or if I wasn't doing good.
Yeah, I think because she's the guinea pig again, finding our groove. This is where I think like classical conversations probably would have helped me with consistency. But when they were younger, and she's the first, so of just finding what worked for her, like math wise or language arts, and then English. Those types of things. And so when it wouldn't work, after I had tried it for a period of time, I tried not to be closed-minded of like,
I had to finish the whole book before moving on.
You did?
No, didn't.
Yeah, I would go ahead and switch. I would try not to. I would try to avoid that. I would try to make it work for her. But if it just wasn't working, math is the one that comes to my mind. And trying to switch to something that would work better for her. And so that's still a frustration of mine. I wish that I would have done something a little bit different in that area. But, you live and you learn, and then you find your groove. And then guess what? You get another child who's completely opposite of the first child, and you get to try again.
Yeah.
It's just it's a fun learning experience for everybody.
Yeah.
And one day she'll have her own children and
she
she's
can experiment on them.
Yeah.
I feel like for math too, I would like a poll of like veteran homeschool moms to see, but I feel like math is something that I wish that I would have just picked a curriculum from the beginning and just stuck with it, even when I felt like it wasn't working or it was like maybe not the best fit, because I feel like that too. And I don't know how you feel, but it would have been better to have the consistency of keeping the same math curriculum and trying to figure out how to make it work, versus because we did the hopping of all the math curriculums to try to find the right one. And now we're so many years into it and there are holes and whatever that we're trying to catch up on and making sure that we caught because we flipped around too much. And really, I mean, some of these math programs, you have some that are super advanced and then some that are not. And so if you're switching between, you are going to have holes and stuff like that. So I feel like that would be one thing that I would do differently too, because I feel like I have let them down in the math department because I was constantly trying to figure out what was going to work, So
yeah. Listen, I was so anti-Saxon forever.
Yeah.
And now, do you know what they do and where we've been the most successful? Is it's basically Saxon. It's Dr. Shorman's math, but he uses the Saxon program, and so, and it's worked.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Imagine that. Like the good old Saxon.
There's also
I just was so mad. I was never gonna do that.
Us too. A Saxon has always felt so challenging and not a good fit and whatever. But there's also Nicole, the math lady, who does that, because I've talked about on a podcast too, where I don't speak the same math language. And I think that was half the problem, is that I was trying to find something that I could explain and they were getting. And then, come to find out all these years later, it's just because I don't know how to explain it for them to understand it. So, I wish we would have started in Saxon and just finished, or just kept on instead of flopping around. So I think if you pick, this isn't a plug for Saxon, but pick a math curriculum when they're younger and then just stay with it. And even through the hard and difficult times, unless it's just really, really not working, because it's harder to live with the consequences of frequently changing, I think, versus just trying to stick it out in that program. So.
And really, the curriculum not only mattered, but once I reached pre-algebra, it is probably the most, because it didn't change after that, and I don't really remember what I did for math before that, and that's mostly when the switching was happening. So I think by high school, don't change.
Yeah, don't change. Yeah. I would say everything that you said is 100% right, except there is one math curriculum, and if you want to DM me, I will tell you what it is, that I would not, it's great. No, don't. We're not going to name drop, but I will tell you privately, so if somebody wants to know. But not to, it's great through elementary through 7th grade. After that, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Just trust me. We walked it, we lived it, and it was not good, and actually it cost us some time school wise. So, anyways, if you want to know, I will be glad to share. I'm just not going to share it openly here.
Yeah.
But yeah, stick, and especially high school. If you find something,
because that's
stick with it.
That curriculum is what I started pre-algebra in, but then I had to do pre-algebra and Dr. Shorman after that because it wasn't preparing me.
It did not prepare her well.
It was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's the curriculum duds are always hard. It's hard to stomach because you have time and you cannot get time back. So then you're adding the stress of figuring out how are we going to make this up, which I will say homeschooling is, the goalpost is only where you put it. So if you decide we're not doing all of these maths, then, you can kind of work backwards from that. But it is very challenging when you have a year where you're like, I'm not sure how much we actually got from that.
Yeah. But I will say though, I know we've said that and it cost us time and whatever, but just know, like what you said, it all ends up working out fine.
Yeah.
So
there's always summers.
And there's always going to be there's always summers. But there's always going to be gaps, no matter if you do every single lesson, every single quiz, every single test. I mean, everybody has gaps. All adults have learning gaps because we're not perfect and we can't know everything. And so I think for me, that was one of my biggest hangups with being homeschooled myself, was feeling like I had gaps that other people didn't have. And I think growing up, becoming an adult, becoming a parent, and realizing, oh no, we all have them.
Yeah.
I still count on my fingers sometimes.
Which is why it's important to teach how to learn.
Yes.
Not just...
Yeah.
Yes, good point.
Good point, Katie. So do you feel like you know how to teach yourself something? Do you know how to learn?
Yeah, if it's something I really want to learn.
Yeah.
Yes.
If it's math, she's like, forget it, I'm out.
Do you feel like confident in your skill of teaching yourself something? If you need, like when you need, do you feel like you know how to learn?
Yeah. I would say, yeah, I would. I kind of agree with Katie where, if it's something I don't want to learn, whether I like it or not, I'm going to have a lot harder of a time forcing myself to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
either way, I can learn whatever it is.
Do you feel like homeschooling has helped you learn that skill?
Yeah. Don't ask me how. I don't ask me.
Doesn't sound very convincing.
Well, I mean, the whole
I think so.
Yeah. I will say, like, the whole goal, right, at the end of the day, I feel like for me was that that is where you needed to be, because like you said, Raven, you're gonna have gaps wherever they are. And so the skill of teaching yourself something that you didn't know, I think is a lost skill that not a lot of kids have nowadays and adults have nowadays. Like, we don't know how to learn something. And so I think that is an important skill to work on as you're homeschooling. And I think for us going into high school, like, I'm not teaching him, like, this year he's doing physics and stuff. Like, I'm not teaching him that. He's reading the science book and picking up what he can from that. But then, we're watching videos of, experiments and stuff. They're doing experiments in class. So you're learning multiple ways, but I am not teaching him physics. He's teaching himself physics.
Right.
So I think that's important too, because I think a lot of people think, well, I don't know physics. I don't know chemistry. I'm bringing up all the sciences, but like, I don't know
why.
I don't like to read. And so how am I supposed to do, an English class with them? You don't, you have to teach your kid how to learn, and then they will do it. Are you there along the way? Yes, in a supporting role kind of thing, but it's on them at this point to teach them themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the greatest benefits of homeschooling through high school, if I can just give a plug, because we both know that people fall off the wagon once they get to high school. I mean, that was always the question. I think probably until this year. Well, I guess after you started high school, so after 9th grade, people finally, I think, quit asking, oh, what are you going to do when they get to high school?
Yeah.
I think people have figured out that I'm in it for the long run now, but and you as well.
Yeah.
But by high school, they should be very independent. They should not need a lot of, hand holding. They shouldn't need any hand holding, I feel like, by high school. And I think this is where I was going with that. The greatest benefit is that they're learning time management. They're learning things that most kids don't learn until they get to college, their first and second year of college. In my opinion, they're having to learn to manage their time well, and studying and dividing their work up. And I'm not saying like I look at their work. I'm the overseer. Right. I'm the facilitator. But I'm not teaching every subject.
Yeah.
They know how to learn. They know what to look up. They know, by high school, that's what they should be doing.
Yeah.
And I never really understood that when they were younger. Like, well, how does that happen? But it happens if you are consistent in the little years of teaching them. And they want that independence too, I think.
Which also, whenever you were teaching me to read and it wasn't working out originally, and it took me a little bit longer, I think, because at the beginning, and with violin too, when it became hard for me, y'all forced it for a little while, and then y'all realized, you wanted me to love reading more than know how to read, and you wanted a long-term outcome more than just an immediate okay, and then move to the next thing. And so I think that's one reason, or one example of how to teach, to learn yourself.
Yeah. Do you want to share anything about that? Do you want to share anything about your reading journey?
It was frustrating at the beginning, and then even after I learned to read, like how old was I when I read
Well,
my first? I was
You were 9.
8 or 9 when I started reading, like picking up books on my own and reading them. And then like after learning to read, like spelling became I wasn't very strong, and it kind of was embarrassing. But I don't know, and I think I'm glad I wasn't forced to read or learn how to read when I was 5, because I don't think I would have had the same love for reading I do now. It would have seemed more like a chore, I think. And that's kind of how it felt whenever you were first teaching me. But
Yeah. So I started teaching her at 4.
Yeah.
And then when we started homeschooling, I definitely felt like I had to push it even harder because, hello, I've got to prove myself now.
Yeah.
But then there was a point where I just kind of took a step back, and I mean, honestly, she just played for a few years. And one day, the first book, do you remember the first book that you brought to me?
mm-mm.
It was on a Sunday. It was a sunny, warm Sunday. No, just kidding. It was Alice in Wonderland. She brought Alice in Wonderland, which, if you know anything about who's the person who wrote that book, Lewis Carroll. He's kind of crazy, but she read it and she loved that book. And I thought, wow, like, it wasn't an I can read book. It was a book of substance. And so then I say of substance. It was kind of a weird book, but I think after that is when I realized I can't really force them to do anything. Sometimes their maturity just needs to catch up.
But then some people take that as, homeschoolers don't do anything they don't want to do.
Right.
Everything is whatever is easy for you, whatever you like to do, which that's
not always
also
true.
not true.
Yeah, that's
because
not
math
true.
exists.
Yeah.
So we kind of went off, but yeah. I think there's a balance, and I think sometimes you do push them a little bit more. And violin is a great example. That was one that there were times where we would take some extended breaks because we felt like it was necessary. But then there were times where I'm like, no, like, you're going to do it. And now we can see the benefits of that. Mm-hmm. Although I still have one child who never practices and gets up and plays like her and her younger brother, they practice pretty faithfully. And then the youngest brother, who hardly, picks
doesn't
it,
touch it.
doesn't touch it. And then he gets up there and it's like, we're like, okay. But anyways, yeah. So there are times when you can't hold them to the fire, but gently,
I think the more mature you become in homeschooling, the longer you do it, the more you kind of start to know your kid and know, is this a time that I need to push, or is this a time that we need to step aside and kind of wait out whatever is happening? Because there were, I think that's something that I wish I would have stuck to more, is making them do more things that they didn't want to do. Although we've always done a lot of things. So
y'all have.
Yes, we've always been very, very busy when it comes to homeschooling stuff. So it was kind of like when they said they didn't want to do anything anymore, I'm like, okay, I can take that off my plate. Do you want to say anything about something that stood out to you on your homeschool journey? Like a struggle or something that you liked? Or
I think I would say a struggle that I've had has been comparing myself to others, or not knowing exactly where I am, like Katie said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, I don't know. I think a lot of it for me is math, and it's hard to gauge whether I'm behind or if I'm like on time or where I'm supposed to be in math. Because, I have friends who are like doing above college level math, and I'm like, I don't even understand the words you're saying right now. And then I have friends who are I would say further behind. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're, a little behind. So it's hard to gauge if I'm falling behind or not. I don't know that I'd say I've overcome that, but
Yeah.
I guess I've come to learn to.
That can be a life struggle
Yeah.
too. So, I mean, yeah, it took me a long time to get past that and to realize, yeah.
But I think even
So
like I'm thinking about when I was in high school, in public school. I don't know that I ever necessarily felt like I knew how I measured up to other people either. I guess I was getting grades in class, but you get like your stuff is graded by me, kind of like, I don't know if that's a common high school problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a good point too, because I think because you're all moving, as long as you keep progressing,
Yeah.
right? Like to the next grade, you don't notice that difference because, yeah. So like peer level on like levels of things, who knows more, whatever. I bet that doesn't really exist that much.
I think now it does because like you can look at your GPA and stuff.
Oh, and so like they're comparing all the time because they have access to it all the time.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty common there with them too.
That
Or
seems
like
it would
who's
be
in the
very
AP
stressful.
classes or something.
Yeah,
I would think that it would be.
I can remember I found out that I was in like the top 10 percentile of my class, and I thought, there's no way. Like, that doesn't make sense. Maybe it wasn't the top 10. Maybe it was the 20. Whatever it was, because I was just a very, like, I didn't put much effort into school. But I was shocked when I found out where I was. So I can't imagine having the access to it all the time. That would be crazy. I didn't know that.
My friends
Yeah.
compare all the time, and there's a test that I know that they can take, and it's like a 10-15 minute test, whatever, and it'll tell you where you are, and they've all done it. I'm like, I'm not doing that. No. They're like, oh, what's your score? I'm like, oh, I just don't have time. I'm not doing that.
Okay, so what would y'all say is your favorite thing about homeschooling, like activity or favorite thing you've gotten to do over the years?
I think probably just playing. Before, because I didn't know what grade. Oh, I didn't say this yet. I didn't know what grade I was in until 8th grade.
This is important, y'all.
But all the time before that, I really liked the flexibility we had to just play outside and like dig holes and paint and build stuff. That was always really fun. And also just being able to practice like being with my family every single day and like and not working through arguments and stuff that we now have practice doing with each other whenever we all move out of the house.
We're experts now.
Now.
Yeah.
That's been one of my favorite parts.
Yeah.
I would say one of my favorite things is we've had a lot of like class parties where we had one. What did we do? Did we do Star Wars? I think.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Like we had.
Y'all done some cool ones.
Yeah, we had one where we went to one of the family's houses and we watched Star Wars, and we had Star Wars themed snacks, and we've done a lot of stuff like that, usually for movies or like movies based on books that we've read, but just a lot of stuff like that, and it's been really, really fun.
So would you say your favorite thing is book club?
Yeah. Cue the outro.
Nobody said book club. That was my favorite part, is book club. Doing fun books.
Yeah. I would say book club, and I would also echo what Katie said about just the freedom of them having endless. I think that's what I miss the most about them being little, is just the endless amounts of free play.
Mm-hmm.
They would just be outside for hours and hours, and they would have nothing more than like maybe chalk and like some old wood that probably Kevin didn't want them messing with. But they would pull it out and make forts and come in and get sheets and blankets and go out, and I don't know, have picnics or
or make videos and then
make videos.
have movie nights.
I
Yeah.
miss Katie's
So
videos.
just, I know. Do you know who's taking up the reins though?
With a lot of help from
Katie, but Olivia is picking up the reins
cute.
on making videos and editing. So
Cute.
it's very cute.
it's a new era.
That's funny.
The content is quite interesting.
The content is quite interesting. Yes.
Nice. We'll have to
It
get
makes me wonder if that's what y'all thought when you watched mine.
No, yours are so cute, Katie. So I think a good place to end would be if what wisdom would you impart on a homeschooling kid who's just starting? Like, is there something that you wish somebody would have told you when you were younger, or like a tip or whatever that you wish that you figured out later on but you wish you knew earlier, kind of thing?
I don't know. I think even if someone had told me some of the things I've learned, I probably wouldn't have received it. It's just something that you have to figure out on your own. But I think the best place to find community is probably at church, because then you're exposed to all different age groups, and all different types of people, and that has been really beneficial to me. But then also just take advantage of the time you have to read.
I love that answer.
That's my favorite answer.
Yes.
I kind of agree with Katie. I don't know that I'd actually listen to what I had to say
Okay.
or follow it, but I would say, just try to actually learn it, because I feel like in the beginning I would kind of just shrug it off, and I don't think I realized how much, like, not that I wasn't learning the stuff, but that I wasn't trying to learn how to learn it, I guess. So later down the line, when they were like, "Oh, do you remember that thing?" I'm like, "No, I learned it for the 2 weeks that I needed to know it," And I feel like that has done more harm than good.
So just
Good advice.
Yeah.
Try
to retain the
Yeah.
information.
Yep. Don't shrug it off.
Okay, so
Good.
Raven, what would you say is some advice that you would give to a new homeschooling mom?
I would say trust your gut for each child. Know that you're going to mess up and you're not going to get it right. And you're going to choose the wrong curriculum sometimes. Sometimes there's going to be tears. That doesn't mean that you're a failure at what you're doing. There's going to be times when kids will have questions in a particular curriculum, and you're going to have to research it or find a way to help them learn that information. That doesn't mean you're a failure because you don't know something. But yeah, I would say that just to trust yourself, but also remember that you have to trust the Lord, and that He ultimately has your children's heart and interest and their desires and their future in His hands, and you can't control that. You can't control every aspect of that, and as they get older, you will realize that more and more. So I think that staying grounded in the Word is important, and just in prayer for your kids, and most important, or not most importantly, but also just to keep doing it. If that is what you feel convicted and called to do, to homeschool your children, stay the course, because it does pay off. And that doesn't, I think when my kids were younger, I thought the payoff, when I say younger, like when I first started, the payoff would be that they went to an Ivy League school or something like that. The payoff is that for me now, this far, is that they're walking with the Lord and that they're contributing citizens to the society. Mm-hmm. Whether they, went through calculus and math, or, what they can write the best paper, or they've read the greatest book. Those things are nothing to me if they're not walking with the Lord and are contributing human beings to society. So that would be my advice, is just stay the course and begin with the end in mind, and sometimes, like I already said, like sometimes that changes. Like in the beginning, I thought the end goal was this thing, this worldly achievement, but that's not the end goal for me anymore. But stay the course, stay true to your convictions, and walk close to the Lord. That would be my advice.
I think what I would say kind of rolls into that of remember your why you're doing it. For me, I never went into it with the goal of academic success. I always went into it thinking that I want my kid to have this wonderful experience of, being at home and kind of doing our own thing, and not the pressure of homeschool and stuff like that. But yes, always too, relationship wise, our relationship, their spiritual relationship, and having the time to like actually work on those things. That was always part of my why. And I think knowing what your why is on the hard days, you repeating that to yourself, or when you're trying to make a decision about something, doing a co-op or doing electives and stuff like that, and time, you're trying to figure out time management. Remembering why you're homeschooling, I think can help you navigate some of those tricky situations where you might find yourself in a situation where you're like, well, this wasn't the best choice. Kind of going from there. I think that's where a lot of people kind of forget, and maybe they stop homeschooling because they've kind of lost sight of that, because it can get, and there will always come a time where it's overwhelming and it's frustrating for them, for you, for everybody. And it would be so much easier to just say, we're just going to be done with this. But it has always been important to me for us to have a good relationship, and for my kids to have their own relationship with the Lord. And I feel like homeschooling has given us time to do both of those things. And I've tried to prioritize that when I could.
Yeah. I would say one more thing. One more thing, because you said something that triggered this thought, is tune out the negative voices of people who are quizzing your kids or asking you if they're on level, or I'm talking about in the little years. Yeah. And I'm tune it out always. But especially when you're getting started, you're going to have to put your blinders on to that type of energy, if you want to say that, and stay the course and remember your why.
Yeah,
that's really good.
Thanks so much for listening today. And thank you to our sweet, wonderful firstborn children. Our guinea pigs, they turned out okay, though. They turned out okay. So they're graduating this year and going to go off into the world. And we've done it. The finish line is so close. So thank you so much for being on the podcast, guys. And we'll see you next time. Bye. Versus if you weren't going.
Sorry.
we gotta bring some more energy to this, guys.
Being able to. What are you doing?
I'm just trying to get back in the frame because I realized I was like floating.
Oh my goodness, there's a hawk.
What? They got sidetracked.
Where?
In the tree.
What? Oh my gosh. Rachel, bird sighting. It's a bird. Oh, he's gone.
You have created your mini-me of bird sightings?